A remarkable story that happened on a remarkable day. That was September 11th, 2001, where I was caught underneath the World Trade Center as it collapsed. And thanks to my higher self, I was able to stay alive. For the time being, if you haven't finished the meditation courses first, I highly recommend you do that. You're going to need to get a grip on those before you're able to pursue communicating with the higher self. Visualizing is great, manifesting is an amazing thing. Being myself, I think it's more valuable to learn how to understand and identify how to communicate with your higher self. For those who aren't familiar, your higher self is you, okay? So we are in this physical body, we're in the third dimension, and we can only hear and see certain frequencies. The sound we can hear is between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. We can only see a particular band of frequencies on the light spectrum, but there are so many other frequencies that exist, and we just don't have access to them. Now, we exist in all dimensions, but this limited body that we're in right now can only understand the third dimension. Your higher self can see the bigger picture. Your higher self can see everything. So, learning how to communicate with it would be most beneficial to us. But before we get into it, please go like and subscribe to this channel. This is valuable information that needs to be shared with people. We want to get involved with that algorithm so it reaches more people. So go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. In September 2001, my son had lived several blocks away from the World Trade Center. Often I would go to his mother's house, stay overnight, and wake him up for the next day at school, get his breakfast ready, take him to school, which was 2 blocks away. He was literally 5 blocks away from the World Trade Center. I'd come back at lunchtime, help this class with the lunches. He was in 1st grade at this time. And my ex-wife, she had remarried, amazing guy. And we never really talked in the morning. I was there for my son, and they understood and respected that, and it was as far as it went. That morning, we all woke up, and we just had to share with each other that we had the most horrific dreams, all 3 of us. It's pretty odd. My dream was that I was running through a medieval village in the nighttime. It was lit by torches, and every road led back to the same roads. And I was running through them while being chased by this massive monster, this giant ogre. And he was chasing me, and I could see his punch come, and his big arm would come no matter where I ran on these roads. Trying to avoid him, his fist would contact with my face and would knock out all of my teeth. I'd spit out all my teeth, and immediately they would grow back, and this kept happening over and over and over again. Now, my son was on the intersection of the West Side Highway and Chambers Street, for those of you who know Lower Manhattan, and it was such a beautiful day. I distinctively remember that. And just like any other day, I walked into his schoolyard, dropped him off at his school, hung around for a few minutes, and head back to Brooklyn and get ready for the gym. So I went into the subway, came back out into the subway in Brooklyn, and you know something's up in New York City whenever there's many cars pulled over on the side, haphazardly, with their doors open and the radio blasted. But the radio's not blasting music, it's blasting news. And I noticed this was happening, but I wasn't paying any attention to what the news was saying. I proceeded to go to my apartment. Upon arriving at my apartment, my roommate, he's like, "Yo, have you see the World Trade Center got hit by a plane?" I was like, "Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I gotta go get my son." And I turned around and exited my apartment, and as I was going on the stairs, I'm like, "I gotta get my son." And I started moving a little quicker. The whole thing's like sitting in. I'm processing all this. And I get down to the street level, and I can see the smoke, as I was living in downtown Brooklyn at the time, and I could see the smoke coming from Lower Manhattan. I'm like, "No, I gotta get my son." So I started running back to the subway. I'm now running at full speed back towards the subway. And I notice on the right-hand side, I'm passing a bodega. And if those of you who don't know what a bodega is in New York City and various Latin parts of the world, a bodega is like a mini convenience store where you can buy an assorted amount of items instead of going to a supermarket. So after I passed this bodega, in all this confusion and chaos, I hear as clear as day in what I think might be my left ear, right behind me, saying, "Go back to that bodega and get a mango." And I was like, that's very odd, but considering the situation is like a very unique one. I've never been in a situation like this before. There's a lot of high anxiety, a lot of pressure, a lot of energy in the air. I chalked it up as my subconscious just going crazy on me. So I kept on running. About 2 blocks later, I hear it again, as clear as day. "Go back to that bodega and get a mango." I said, "All right, I hear you. I totally hear you, but that's not making sense right now. It is not making sense." And I continued to run towards the subway. I turn the corner and I get to the subway, and I go to jump down the first couple steps. And as I'm in motion, as I'm in midair from this hop, it's like I hit a soft wall, and I softly slid down and slowly slid down until my feet were firmly on the ground. The whole thing was very relaxed, very gentle. And it said it again. Go back to that bodega and get a mango. I said, you got it right away. I'm like 12 blocks away now, right? And I just start running back to the bodega. But it just catch you up where I was metaphysically. I had already been meditating for over a decade now, and was at that stage where I was trying to understand the communication with the higher self. That's the trick. That's the key. Now, you gotta meditate often. And one of the things I want to stress is whenever you are meditating, that you just pay attention and pay attention to every little nuance. So it's not very easy to understand what messages are coming from the higher self, because you might be confusing them with excitement, confusing them with paranoia, confusing them with hope, or just maybe looking too far and you just don't have an understanding of what it is. After this entire process calmed down and stuff, I fully understood the method of the communication from my higher self. I can't describe it. It's just something I sense. It's something that is instilled in me now that I know. So I know whenever I've had too much coffee and I get this idea in my head, or if I'm experiencing a little anxiety and I get an idea in my head, I know how to differentiate those sensations, those feelings from whenever my higher self is telling me something. And your higher self is, don't get it twisted, your higher self is always in touch with you. It is always there by your side. It's always there in front of you. It is you, right? It's always communicating with you. The trick is learning how to figure out its message. Okay, so now I'm back at this bodega, and I grab a mango, and I'm in line, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. And in front of me are 3 elderly people, each paying individually with their EBT cards, and can you imagine how long that takes? They pull them out of their purse, they gotta look through the price, they gotta haggle with the price, they gotta make sure the price is correct, what they're paying for, they gotta grab the wrong amount, oh my god. Realistically, I was probably there for 14 minutes being detained. I got my mango, and I'm pretty much out of breath at this time, so I just start walking very fastly back to the subway. I descend into the subway. I eventually enter the subway. On the subway are just 2 other people. Across from me is a elderly black woman reading a Bible, and at the other end of the train is a middle-aged gentleman just minding his own business. I don't even know the time. Really, be honest with you, 9:30, something like that. I really don't know. So we're in Brooklyn. So we're in this train, and we're in Brooklyn, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Brooklyn, you got to go under a river to get to Lower Manhattan, and then you can exit the subway, right? So the train starts moving, and it stops. After a certain amount of time, there's an announcement, ladies and gentlemen, they have an emergency. The train needs to return back to Brooklyn. And I'm like, man, so the train starts moving back to Brooklyn. Well, it stops after a bit. Says, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're clear to go back to Manhattan. We're going to resume going back to Manhattan. So here's going back to Manhattan. Stops underneath in the tunnel and underneath the water. Says, ladies and gentlemen, we're sorry, we have to return back to Brooklyn. So it's going like it's back and forth like this for I don't know how long. Eventually, we were just stuck for I don't even know how long. I couldn't even tell you how long. But if anybody out there has ever been stuck in a New York City subway, no matter what the hell is going on in your life, no matter what pressing issues are happening, it all comes to a halt. You can't go nowhere. You aren't doing anything except sitting in that subway. So now's a better time than ever to just make friends with everybody on the train, or at least the elderly black woman across from me. And it wound up that she worked in the community college that was diagonally across from my son's school. She was like, oh, well, I had heard that a plane hit the World Trade Center. And I was like, yeah, I heard the same thing. And we had to, light conversation and da-da-da-da. After a while, when the conversation expired, we went back to our business, right? After a certain amount of time, I looked into the other car. There's a glass window between the subway cars. I looked into the other car, and it was total pandemonium. The car was filled with people, and they were just freaking out. Just mob of people just screaming. And my heart instantly jumped into my throat. I couldn't hear anymore. I looked at the lady to see if she had seen what I saw. She hadn't noticed it yet. I looked at the other end of the train to see if the gentleman had saw what I saw. He hadn't seen it yet. And by the time I looked back, someone opened one of the doors, and BAM! This wall of dust just smacked me in the face. As the door was opening, I was standing up, and it smacked me in the face so hard, I almost fell into the ground, and the subway just flooded with people. Screaming at the top of their lungs. Flooded with dust. Dust so thick, I couldn't see 4 feet in front of me. It had seemed that more and more people were just forcing themselves and piling into the subway. I immediately made my way over to the elderly woman, knowing she was about to get crushed to death. I stood in front of her and I gripped the bars in front of her to give her some space, and I just held the people off as best as I could, and I was in her face and said, listen, I got you, I'm gonna stay with you, don't worry. And I was just using all my strength to keep from the people from crushing her. Well, like I said, there was a lot of dust in that space, and she started choking. I had a bandana in my pocket, and I took the bandana out and gave it to her, and she's like, it's not gonna work, it doesn't matter. Unless the bandana is wet, the dust is gonna come right through it. Well, I got a mango. I got a mango in my pocket, right? You're good, you're good. So I take the mango and I squashed the mango into the bandana, making it moist. And now I'm able to not only just tie it around her face, but I'm able to paste it over her face as well. You're good. It's complete pandemonium. Everybody's losing their minds. I'm got this elderly woman to focus on, and it all just moved so quickly. There was this large black guy in the train. He's like, everybody, shut the F up right now! Shut the F up! Shut up! And he calmed everybody down. And everybody calmed down, and you notice that the air conditioning of the car was recycling the dust into the car. He's like, gotta tell him to turn off the AC, turn off the AC! But there was a button you can contact the conductor, and they were hitting the button, turn off the AC, turn off the AC! And they responded, they turned off the air conditioning unit. So, what happened was, not our car, but our train, our entire train. Our train started moving towards Manhattan. We were the fourth entire train. 4 trains in front of us was able to kiss up into what was left of the subway platform. And then the second train kissed right up to that first train. The third train kissed right up to that train, and us being in the fourth one kissed up to that one. So the idea was we were to walk through our entire train, not just the car, the entire train, out of the train, into the subway tunnel, enter the next train, climb up into the next train, walk through that one, and so on and so forth. Well, this lady is in bad shape now, so I'm carrying her. As we're walking, people were choking to death. People were choking to death in the train. I could see in that initial car, people were falling in front of me. My adrenaline was so high. It didn't bother me until 3 days later. So I'm carrying this elderly woman to the train, stepping over bodies, and we know that nobody came back for those bodies. We down onto the tunnel, into the next car, into the next train, through the next train, and so on and so forth. And so we all, single file, came out of that subway platform on Chambers Street. When we exited, everybody was coming from Brooklyn, and the Brooklyn Bridge was right there. So everybody immediately started walking back towards Brooklyn across the bridge. Now, there was, I think, the Red Cross that had cases of water that were handing water to us as we came out, but I had to go get my son, which was in the opposite direction, towards the World Trade Center. So I start running down Chambers Street towards my son's school, and it is the most surreal thing I've ever seen. There is absolutely nobody in Lower Manhattan, and I mean nobody. There's 4 inches of dust on the ground, a blackened sky, and nobody around, which is impossible. I don't care what time of the day, morning, night you go to any part of Manhattan, especially that part, there's always somebody there. No activity, no cars, no nothing. 4 inches of dust on the ground I'm running through. Except one lady. She's on her knees with a cell phone up to her face, just wailing. And I run by her, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? I run across the island of Manhattan. I'm able to start seeing my son's school, which is like a 3-story building. And the closer I get, I can just see like this mound of dust pushed up against it, 2 or 3 stories. So I get to the school. They don't know where he is. I'm not speaking to his teacher. I'm speaking to someone at the school. They say, we think that his class was taken to this location. I go to that location. They tell me they think it's this location. So for the next 4.5 hours, I'm literally running around Lower Manhattan on leads trying to find my son. When I do, after 4.5 hours, I found his teacher, and his mother found him. His mother came right away, immediately, no problem at all. He was fine. Next step was to contact my father. As you can imagine, all cell phone service is dead at this time, so I stood in line at a payphone, and I remember that there was two young, they looked like college kids in front of me, and I'm waiting and I'm listening in on their conversation, and they were talking about like the World Trade Center collapsing. Now understand, I had no idea what happened up until this time. I was like, hey, excuse me, what did you say? You said the World Trade Center collapsed? They looked at me like, where the hell you been, bro? Look. And there was this hole in the sky, and that's whenever I realized what happened. It was so bizarre. It was very, very bizarre. And so whenever I got my turn in line at the phone, I called my father, told him I was okay, and that he had already known that the buildings had collapsed. Okay, so what did I learn? I've told this story easily over 1,000 times. Often I get, oh, you were such a hero, and no, not at all. I was not a hero. I did not feel like a hero whatsoever. And in fact, she was my hero. If I didn't have somebody, if I wasn't put in a situation, in a scenario where I had somebody to focus on in that point, who knows how it would have ended. I was given a responsibility and I acted on it. My higher self specifically put me in that car at that time by delaying me from arriving at the subway platform by telling me to go get that mango. Now, your higher self, and we'll get into this later, but just to be really quick, your higher self could get in touch with you 3 ways. It can send you messages that you feel like you hear. It can give you clues and tips and kind of reveal something, or it could lay hands on you, which it did. It did all 3 of those, as a matter of fact. In hindsight, the voice, it sounded like a voice. It was like an androgynous voice, but it wasn't like, okay, go back to the bodega and get a mango. That took what, maybe 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds to say. It wasn't like that. It was like somebody typed it on a keyboard and hit enter and downloaded that information on me. It's like I got to download. So whenever people say that they got to download, you'll completely understand this once you start experiencing that. And later conversations, full conversations I would have with my higher self, they were given to me in downloads. But by far, to this day, if I'm en route to doing something and I get delayed or sidetracked or anything like that, I do not complain. I understand that maybe my higher self is looking out for me because I don't know what's around the corner, because it's done it for me before. So just to recap, so why this was so valuable to my path. This was the pinnacle moment where I understood, without a shadow of a doubt, fully, how my higher self was going to communicate with me. Can't explain it, but I know the sensation, I know the feeling. From everything from like, I might be scrolling on Instagram or something like that, and we look at a gazillion things on that screen. Once something catches my eye, but it doesn't catch my eye in a normal way. It catches my eye with that sensation. I'm being led by my higher self to look at that. Somebody says something in passing, something I catch out in my ear. That message that they said just seems to be heightened in such a way to call my attention to it in a particular way. I know that's my higher self telling me to pay attention to that, giving me a clue, telling me to pay attention to that and maybe research that because I'm going to need it. And if you are relaxed enough and free of distraction, it will communicate with you. And it has done that many, many times, but that's for another video. This is Sax DMA. If you enjoy what you're hearing, please like and subscribe. This is incredible information I'm giving you that can change your life for the better. Till next time, peace out.
The book of advice is available on Kindle. Find the link in the description below.